Howdy, folks. Welcome to Living with a Genius. I'm your host, Omar Crook. On this episode, I have composer, conductor, pianist, poet, and brand new artist in residence at the LA Opera, Matthew Aucoin. He's making his debut right now in our current production of Aucoin by Philip Glass. He's a very interesting guy. I really enjoyed our chat. This is a 20-minute excerpt of a much longer episode, which can be found at lwagpod.com. So, if you'd like to hear more of our chat, why don't you go over to Living with a Genius and check it out. I also want to thank LA Opera for co-producing this episode. I'm really excited about our new relationship, and I look forward to putting a lot more stuff up on their website. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy it. And here's Matt. So when you're conducting, especially in a piece like Akhenaten, how do you decide who gets the attention?
That's such a good question.
I mean, sometimes, like in any performance with any conductor, things start to phase or things start to get out of whack. And how do you decide, I guess, is it through the rehearsal process that you figure out where the pitfalls are and who needs what?
That's such a good question. I'm not sure I've ever been asked it quite that way.
Because there's a lot going on, and you have to make choices about who you're giving your time to.
Well, one obvious one is entrances.
Right.
When there's someone entering, you want to welcome them in
Yes.
and let them know when something's coming.
Yes.
But actually, something that surprised me about this piece is that if a particular figure is physically exhausting to play, such as, on certain instruments, especially the winds, then they actually need that attention, even if it's just going on. Normally when a figure is just repeating, you don't need to keep tending that fire because it just kind of set it and forget it. But with this, to be frank, if you don't keep checking in, it's going to slow down because it is exhausting. It is physically exhausting. So you have to keep checking in with the people who are doing the most exhausting physical thing.
Right.
To just say, keep it up. We've done it before. We can do it.
What is it about the metronomic nature of this music that makes it so difficult, where there really is no rubato, it's relentless.
Yes.
But I find that with Puccini and Verdi, at least as a soloist, for me, it's so easy to just feel it together. There's no feeling it together with this piece, it seems like. Maybe in the transitions you find that.
I think there's another element, which is that in Puccini or Verdi, you actually want to hear the sensation of effort. You want to hear the heroic nature of the effort that everyone is giving.
Right, the humanistic element of that story.
Or, and if you're reaching for a high note, we want to feel how much that's taking out of everybody.
Or how you might not make it.
How you might not make it. And that's so exciting. Yeah. The trouble with, not the trouble, but the challenge with Philip Glass is that as soon as you hear the effort, it sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want it to sound completely smooth.
Right.
And, if you were listening...
So it becomes like a mantra. It becomes
a mantra.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think Glass is deeply influenced by Indian music, so that there is the sense that we have to just get into this atmosphere and
allow it to wash over you. Yeah.
For Western trained musicians, this is super hard.
Yeah.
It's not that it's super hard just to get the notes, but to get it without it sounding like you're giving 150%.
Right.
That's hard.
And it has to be phraseless in a way.
Yes. And light.
Yeah.
It can't be, I think we all have a mental image of what a bad performance of Philip Glass sounds like. It sounds like a kid playing a
Casio tone keyboard.
Casio tone keyboard.
Yeah.
A basic, finger exercise.
Yeah.
And we don't want that. We want it to be fluid and timeless.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge. The illusion of effortlessness.
Yeah, I find that with us as a performer, the arc of the phrase is disguised in these little tiny tonal changes that he makes. Like there are these little gestures that occur to change the trajectory of the emotional content of the music.
Yes.
And it's not as obvious, I guess. So as a performer, you never get to that that resolution, it's just this thing that keeps churning like a wheel.
It's a different shape.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving a resolution in a kind of Wagnerian way, because in a way it's all resolved from the first chord.
Right.
It's about that chord as an atmosphere.
Right.
Which is a different different approach.
Right. And what do you think of the juggling?
I love it.
I do too.
I frankly, I wish I could watch it more often. I'm
Yeah.
a little bit distracted down in the pit with conducting this thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's the perfect visual corollary
I think so
to
too.
the way Glass's music moves. You feel that too?
I do.
How do you feel when you have to do it?
I mean, I had Phelim and I had Sean on my show, Sean Gandini, the juggler, and I was talking to Phelim about the juggling. I said, "What does it mean? What's the deal, man?" Basically, and then in typical fashion, I interrupted my own question with an answer, saying that I feel like it's representative of the structure of the piece itself, where you can see the counterpoint, and you can see the visual element of what his music sounds like, and then of course there's like the dramatic part of it with the civilizations going up and the way that the crowd is reacting, and at the end his death. Spoiler alert. But is that kind of how you came? Do you put much thought into the staging? That's a good question. There's a question for you. Do you put a lot of thought into the staging as a conductor?
In general, you
Yeah,
mean?
in general.
Yeah. There are times when you disagree with a director, but hopefully that's fruitful. And I think in this case, I was so on board with Phelim's approach, not just to this specific production, but just to the way that he works with artists, which is so welcoming. And I wish we could have done it every time with the chorus, but as you probably know, he did a kind of circle.
Yeah, sure. I emailed to grab this reserved.
We could lock it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lock it.
I think he started the staging rehearsals with the cast with a kind of circle. Share your feelings. Everyone just had to go around and say how you're doing that day.
Did you participate?
I totally did.
Cool.
And I also participated in the movement exercises he did in the first few days of staging. I wasn't sure that I was at first, but Phelim teaches 4 kinds of movement on stage, which he learned from the acting teacher Michael Chekhov. You know it, but your listeners might not. Molding, floating, radiating, and flying. And as soon as he started doing these exercises, they're about like how you move through a space. Molding means kind of treating the space like it's some thicker substance that you have to mold your way through, and floating means the space kind of makes you levitate. As soon as he started it, I thought, oh, well, this is so relevant for conducting. Because that's interesting. That's basically what you're doing, is you're molding the air, or you're floating, or you're radiating the
intensity or
the character of the music. So I had a blast. I spent a couple days just floating around the room with the singers. It was a great bonding experience.
Yeah. What do you prefer? Do you prefer conducting or composing?
I think in my heart of hearts, I'm a composer.
Yeah.
In the sense that ultimately, I care the most about leaving behind pieces that can have their own life.
Sure.
But something that I got from my years playing jazz, in jazz, there's not really a distinction between performing and composing. You're composing as you play. So, I have a lot of respect for composers who just do their thing and live that life, but it's just in my nature that I want to work with people, and I want to have the catharsis of performing. I feel like if I didn't perform, I would be denying myself the fun part.
Yeah. Do you miss performing with an instrument?
I still do it.
You do?
Occasionally.
Oh.
Tomorrow night at Colburn, I'm playing a few of my songs with a couple of the young artists. But what's nice is that I only do it now in collaborative settings. I would feel totally out of place giving a solo recital or something like that. But if I'm working with an artist I enjoy working with, I'm happy to play along.
Yeah.
No one's expecting Vladimir Horowitz at that point.
I can imagine that conducting also helps you pay the bills. I can't imagine just sitting and writing and making that your only thing when you have these other... First of all, I see that you're a very social person. So maybe the paradigm of the conductor, or the idea of the composer, kind of doesn't jive with your personality.
Well, I need it both ways. It's
do?
Funny. Yeah, for a month this summer, I was in the middle of nowhere, Nova Scotia, with my partner Clay, and we just, barely saw a soul apart from him for over a month.
Yeah.
I need that sometimes, but I need this sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's about finding the right balance between the two.
Yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? Let's say hypothetically we're 10 years down the road. Where do you see yourself wanting to be?
How
is it different?
I care the most about having written the pieces I need to write. And of course, there, in anything we do, there you want to be aware of the conflicting desires that you're feeling.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that your motives are as pure as you claim they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I really hope that the main reason I want to write pieces is just so that I can give something to somebody.
Yeah.
And that the thing I love about a piece of music that's written down is that even if it lay dormant for 400 years and then somebody found it, it could take on
That's right.
life, which
Right.
is, that to me is so thrilling. It's like replayable time. It's
Yeah.
like time, you had the experience of the piece.
Yeah.
And it's like catching a genie in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
You bottle it up and then somebody else can open it someday.
Yeah, it's kind of a testament to that part of your life in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I want to give tons of performances. I'm thrilled
Yeah.
to be doing pieces like Rigoletto with you guys next year. But, I think that the risk, and without in any way comparing myself to these figures, I'm just mentioning people who've, composed and conducted.
Sure.
When you think of someone like Boulez
Mm-hmm.
or, Esa-Pekka Salonen.
You want to say Mahler? Go ahead, say Mahler.
Not saying Mahler. But sure, actually. I mean, Mahler,
Yeah.
great composer. Don't we all kind of wish we had more than a dozen pieces by him?
Right.
I mean, he left these great symphonies behind, but when you think about it, it's completely bonkers that a man who literally knew opera better than anybody,
living. Yeah.
never wrote an opera.
Yeah.
Imagine what a Mahler opera would have sounded like, but
Yeah.
he had a day job. He had a day job that meant that he only composed 2 or 3 months out of the year.
Right.
And I think, it's hard to measure these things in terms of like, this is worth more than that. Maybe the performances of Tristan that he gave were worth
Everything. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But as far as us today,
Mm-hmm.
I think we wish he wrote more pieces.
Yeah, I agree. When you're done with a piece, do you have trouble letting it go?
It depends. Usually I do make revisions. I'm kind of an inveterate reviser.
Up to the performance?
Beyond.
Aha, yeah, okay.
I'll hear the performance and then go, oh, I could get that. We don't really need those 30 seconds. And
Yeah.
But with a few pieces, and I wouldn't claim that I'm a finished product in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Of anything I've written, there are only a couple of pieces that I think are really, that I couldn't make them any better.
Yeah, okay.
With most pieces, I'm still thinking maybe I need to go back and tweak. It's nice to have distance. I'm
Sure.
about to, as we speak, after this, I'm about to go ask Philip Glass some similar questions at a pre-concert, pre-show talk. And one of the things that I'm curious to ask him is how his relationship with Akhenaten has changed. Whether it feels like, is he more distant from it, or in some way has he gotten to understand his own piece better?
Yeah.
Now that he's seen it all over the world,
Right.
in a bunch of different productions.
Right.
What kind of experience must that be?
Right. Here's a question that I've asked, I think, every single composer that I've had on the show. First of all, have you experienced your own music as an audience member?
Yes.
Okay.
It's torture.
There you go.
It's actually easier to perform it myself.
Yeah. Well, I've got my best friend is a very well-known composer, and he can't stand it. Like it drives him crazy. And then a couple of other people that I've asked say, no, I always learn something new about my piece.
Uh-huh.
And so what does that say about the personality? What is that? I haven't figured it out yet.
Well, I'm going to give you the really cynical version.
You okay?
Which I think is me being hard on myself, but there's a kind of megalomania or something, or a need to control the way that it emerges. And one of the things, when you're listening to it being done for the first time, especially if it's an orchestra, it's only read it once or twice.
Sure.
And they haven't spent any time thinking about what it means, and they haven't really done that. Of course you want to jump up on stage and say,
"You're debasing my work."
But then you take a step back and you go, Matt, actually, maybe what you're feeling is anxiety about the piece
itself, the merits of the piece on its own.
rather than
the performance. Yeah.
So really, I think it's painful, but it's 100% necessary, because sometimes in the act of doing it, you don't have the perspective to hear the things that could be better.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about recently with this. It's a real tangent, but when you say perspective, people never thought they were in the dark ages when they were alive. So, yeah, I mean, stepping away from it and having maybe that's what you're talking about, leaving pieces behind, maybe not after your death, but maybe to be able to look back at the pieces as a reflection of parts of your life. I think that's the most appealing thing for me.
Yeah.
Unless it's like this period is bell bottoms and this period is cut off jean shorts, and
I think I know exactly what bell bottom music sounds like too. That brings up.
That's. Do you go back at your compositions that you created a long time ago and cringe?
Totally.
Is that a thing?
Well, there's a technical aspect too. There's just like when you're learning to sing or learning to play an instrument. If you want to achieve a certain effect.
Mm-hmm.
You got to learn the tools.
Sure.
And maybe I was looking at a piece recently actually where I just had the clarinet sitting up in the top of its register so much.
Yeah.
And
you're like, well, if Gershwin could do it, I can.
If only I'd been going for a Gershwin kind of squeal,
Uh-huh.
but I was going for something much lighter. And then I heard a performance of the piece, and of course the clarinet was much too loud, much too present, and it was like, and I played clarinet for a couple of years, so I really should have known better. It's things like that where you just learn tricks
the
of the trade.
mechanics, like the facility of being a good orchestrator.
And also, early on, I think your ideas outrun your technique. I distinctly remember this frustrating feeling of having an idea and having a kind of mental sonic image of what I want a piece to sound like.
Yeah.
And then you turn to the paper and you don't
know how to do it.
Know how to. Yeah. It's like, what am I actually hearing?
Yeah.
Is that like a harmonic? Is that a violin playing a harmonic plus a flute also playing a harmonic plus like a cymbal?
Right.
Or, if I add this spice, will the sauce be better? It's
yeah.
It's that, you know?
And the problem is you don't have 60 of your friends sitting in your living room to
test.
To go, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Have you had that experience where you think it's going to sound one way and you're like, holy shit, well, that's just terrible?
I have.
Or boy, that's a lot better than I thought it would be.
I'm happy to say these days, on a basic level of like, what is it basically going to sound like?
Yeah.
I always know that. Whether it's going to really be effective or whether something's going to hit a kind of psychological climax the way I want it to, you can never predict that.
Yeah.
But I've also been lucky to have friends, both instrumentalists and singers, who have been willing to kind of be guinea pigs and give me advice. I have a violinist friend that I've written tons of music for, and God, he's been so patient with me. I'm late delivering a piece to him right now.
Where is he?
He's actually, we were at Harvard together, but now, very luckily, he's in San Diego.
Oh, wow.
So it's very easy he came to see Aucoin.
Now, after Harvard, where did you continue your studies, or did you just start writing music and doing your thing professionally?
Well, actually, a somewhat crazy thing happened, which is that I was conducting The Marriage of Figaro, my senior year with this college opera company. And so a woman came up to me and said, that was really good. I think you should be working at the Met. And I was like, oh, yeah, me too, lady. Maybe, maybe someday.
How do you get to the Met?
Practice. And she's like, no, I actually work there.
Oh.
And we, I think there may be an opening for an assistant conductor. So the next week, it was March of my senior year, I didn't have anything firm lined up yet. Went to New York, took the audition, and I was hired. And for the first gig I did was Thomas Ades's Tempest, which was a trial
with Hila.
Sorry,
with Hila Plittman.
No, it was Audrey Luna. Singing that impossible, or nearly impossible, but possible role, and with Ades conducting, and so it was a trial by fire, or maybe by water. Given that was the Tempest. And at the same time, I got accepted into the composition master's program at Juilliard. So I was living this crazy life of going back and forth across that street. I ultimately did not finish the Juilliard degree. Because
you were doing what you wanted to do.
Yeah,
I would
honestly,
imagine.
I think it was there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And then I was lucky enough to spend a couple of years assisting Riccardo Muti.
Oh, what's that like?
With the Chicago Symphony. It's...
I wonder what it's like working with Riccardo Muti. You know what? I do know. I know the answer because I did the podcast, and you can hear it too at lwagpod.com or livingwithagenius.com. Just depends on how much you feel like typing, I suppose. I want to thank Matt for being on my show. I feel very fortunate to be working with him. He's a terrific artist, a gentleman, and really a good colleague. So thank you, Matt, for joining me. I also want to thank LA Opera for co-producing this segment. I look forward to putting up many, many more in the future. I have lots of full-length interviews on my website and at iTunes. I think I've got 43 now. So why don't you check them out? Lots of interesting guests. Jeff Beal, Eric Whitaker, John Powell, James Conlon, all sorts of good folks. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, and until next time.